And welcome to another episode of the Digital Contractor Show on Turf's Up Radio. My name is Tim Fondrick with Hardscape Marketer. And today my guest is Scott Friedman. He's the president of GT Landscape Solutions. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me today.
Looking forward to diving in, Scott. We've known each other for a lot of years.
Long time, yeah.
Local here in the Oregon, Salem, Oregon area. So it's good to connect with a local guest here on the show. But would love to just kind of hear a little bit about your background, how long you've been in the industry, and just tell us a little bit kind of high level about your business.
Yeah, just started in 1999 and was in college at the time, attending Linfield in McMinnville, and was just trying to make a buck cutting grass. And fast forward, I guess now 21 years later, and we've gone through a rebranding and a number of iterations of the company, and here we are today. I made it through Linfield with a finance degree, zero horticultural experience, and now I've got a lot of horticultural experience, and the finance degree didn't hurt either.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I mean, so with definitely coming at it with a different angle, right, than somebody coming kind of growing up in the industry, maybe. What made you choose the horticulture, the green industry?
Well, I don't know that I chose it. I think it kind of chose me, and definitely did approach it from the business standpoint. I got married really young. I had just turned 20 when I got married, and all of a sudden the world got real fast, and had to make money and pay rent and pay for college, and so like a lot of people in this industry, it's got a pretty low barrier of entry, and I was doing other things and just needed a couple extra bucks, and found out that I was pretty good at cutting grass, and that's kind of just where it started, and by that word of mouth and momentum, it just kind of went from there. But I definitely took it from a business standpoint versus like a love of the outdoors and horticulture. It was really born out of necessity, and then we grew by doing a good job, and then rapidly learning all of the things I needed to learn to do it at a professional level.
Nice. So that was, you said, like 21 years ago.
Yeah, right. Crazy
how time flies.
I know.
And we've known each other probably, I mean, at least
pretty much all that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were in West Salem landscaping probably right about the time I was starting out.
Yeah, for sure. So again, it's kind of fun, on the radio show here, we interview people and contractors, green industry folks, professionals from all over the country. So it's kind of fun to actually interview somebody right in our neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. I remember when you were smarter than I was and went into the digital internet realm more than doing the landscape thing. So yeah, we both had quite an evolution in the industry.
For sure. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your company today in terms of kind of just overall kind of size or crews, or just, whatever you're comfortable sharing with us where you're at now.
Absolutely. We've got currently about 40 full-time employees. The last 5 years, we've really worked to downsize, surprisingly. And that was, that really kind of started with the Obamacare thing, starting to try to get to numbers. My business was really susceptible to the medical insurance thing. We hadn't had that across the board for all the crews. So we kind of began a contraction at that point. And then kind of continued to contract because I liked it better. It was more fun being small. But where we are today, we last year did a total kind of rebrand, and really have a renewed focus on kind of getting back to the roots of what we do. And commercial landscape maintenance is really where we're going to be putting all of our attention moving forward. We've got crews in Portland and Salem. We operate the I-5 corridor. We also are a little unique as a contractor. We also have a civil division within the company, so we can do not only the maintenance work, which is really our current level of focus, effort, but we can provide solutions outside of a typical landscape company.
So tell me more about that mix. So like kind of you got your landscape maintenance mix. Is it mostly commercial or also?
It's predominantly commercial. We do have some residential in there, but it's one of those things as time evolves, we'll probably completely dissolve our residential our residential base. But I've got clients I've been working for 18 years.
Right.
I think my oldest client is 18 years now. So that will evolve away as as the commercial really just becomes our operational focus.
And so you're headquartered in Salem. You've got crews in Portland and Salem. Do you have an actual physical location up in Portland as well, or?
We did 2 years ago now. I closed that office and consolidated to Salem, and then the crews that were out of there, they still run out of the Portland area, but we don't maintain an office presence up there. They show up, get their equipment, go.
Right.
And but yeah, all the office functionality now is out of Salem.
Awesome. Well, in the that's an awesome introduction, I think, and a little background. In the next segment, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your rebrand, kind of what prompted that, and the process you went through for companies that are kind of thinking about that, kind of entertaining that idea.
Yeah,
maybe the pros and cons, right? So
yeah, it's a tough one.
All right. So with that, we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back with Scott Friedman from GT Landscape Solutions. Hey, Turfs Up Radio fans, this is Tim Fondrick with Hardscape Marketer. Are you frustrated or overwhelmed with marketing your business? If you'd like to be a local market leader, create a steady stream of new customers, and spend more time doing the things you love, we can help. We know what it's like to build a landscape business, run crews, and work with customers. If you're ready to grow your business by getting your internet marketing right, download our ultimate internet marketing cheat sheet today at hardscapemarketer.com/cheat sheet. That's hardscapemarketer.com/cheat sheet. And we're back with another segment here of the Digital Contractor Show on Turfs Up Radio. I'm here with Scott Friedman with GT Landscape Solutions. And I have to be a little careful because I've known Scott for many years and I almost said his old name. So I want to kind of, his old business name. I want to talk in this segment about your rebrand. And I'd love to kind of hear a little bit more. And I think this will provide a lot of value to our listeners. Hear more about what's involved in a rebrand. What are some of the pros? What are some of the things to think about? What are some of the pitfalls? And so I look forward to talking about that. Scott, first of all, maybe just tell us what prompted the rebrand for you and what started the process.
Yeah. Well, there was kind of two things that really played into it. The first and foremost, honestly, was my own personal apathy towards just showing up every day and it just being the same thing. So we, after 21 years of doing the same thing, we felt stagnant. I felt stagnant personally in terms of just everything being the status quo. So that was kind of one of the things that played into it. And then secondarily, and probably honestly most importantly, was making a move away from the residential markets in their entirety. My company was always had a significant residential piece to it. And the name Green Thumb lent itself more readily identifiable, at least in the markets that we compete in, to a residential connotation. And we wanted to have a more institutional look, a little bit cleaner image in terms of branding of trucks and shirts, and so we kind of dove into the process of it, and took almost 2 years, I think, from its inception of beginning to think about it to having the courage to actually move forward and do it.
Right. I mean, it's a huge decision, right?
Oh yeah, huge, because somebody's seen my trucks for years, customers, commercial clients that have worked with us. You have to almost reintroduce yourself as the same but different. And so it was different than what I anticipated. It wasn't honestly as painful as I thought it was going to be, but we definitely have seen more pros than cons in doing so, but definitely it comes with having to be methodical about how you do it.
So I know you enlisted the help of a marketing company, friends of mine. So tell us kind of like what that looked like to kind of enlist, somebody to help you with the process, and how did you get started?
Well, I would say to anybody that doesn't compete against me, utilize marketing. And marketing is very different than sales. If you compete against me, I'd rather you continue doing what you're doing.
Right.
But I knew that I didn't know how to do it. I knew we were missing something in terms of how we were operating, how other companies, both in our industry and outside of our industry, operated. And just needed to have somebody that had the expertise of messaging, creating brands, redoing everything. I mean, from your letterhead, which is a simple thing, to every physical digital form, every paper form, every truck, uniform, trailer, across the board. So it wasn't something we had the capability or know how to do in-house. And so, we went out and began working with a company called Project LTD and doing the preliminary brainstorming, logo development, and then all the way through implementation.
So my guess is you probably did a lot of work around messaging first. I mean, that was a lot of the purpose, right? Just to kind of reframe who you are as a company, who you serve, and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely represented for us a divergence from what we were doing, but we had to be very careful not to alienate a significant portion of our client base, which was still residential through the transition. So, the messaging was pretty critical. With eBlast direct, we call a lot of clients directly. Had to have a very unified, thoughtful way we were going to disseminate this and roll it out, roll it out to the public, including how you pay us. All the paying, right. all the vendors have portals, and while we could still take a check in, under either name, I was training our clients that after 2-3 months of doing it, hey, let's really
remember, right? Something different.
Yeah,
as if people write checks these days. I guess you still do, but
yeah, or they have it set up on bill pay, or you're in the payment processing for your commercial clients, and it's kind of hard written in there as one name, and getting everybody converted does take some time. Yeah.
So it sounds like some great pros, and you really work through the process. Would there be any like one or two pitfalls that you'd like to talk about?
Well,
or things to watch out for. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would think if somebody was contemplating it, you have to be thoughtful around it. It's not as easy as printing new logos and putting them on your truck. Unless in our instance, we did not only a new logo, we did an entirely new name. While the name still has some continuity to it, if you were to see two trucks side by side, the old company and the new name, you wouldn't draw a parallel to the two. So you would really, I'd say being thoughtful is first and foremost, and not reacting to this desire. We're going to change our name, we're going to rebrand, we're going to get a new logo, but that's what we want to have happen. How do we get there? And start working backwards to put the plan together. And like I said, it took us almost 2 years to fully implement it.
Nice. So be thoughtful, be patient, and let it work. Go through the paces to make it all work in a positive way.
And add to your team professionals that know how to do it.
Awesome.
People like yourself that are in marketing, understand marketing. Because if you think that you're an expert at marketing and you don't have the experience, the degree, possibly, but just the real life experience of the difference between marketing and sales and running and owning a business, they're very distinctly different. And I would say if we did it on our own, we would probably not have been successful in the outcome.
Great. Well, I think that's a really good insight into doing a rebrand, and I appreciate that, Scott. So with that, I think we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Yeah, and welcome back to another segment here of the Digital Contractor Show. I'm with Scott Friedman from GT Landscape Solutions. And Scott, we talked a little bit about, during the break, about some of the changes in marketing and some of the timely pivots we're having to make, and during this time. So you've been around, obviously, in the business for a long time. Let's talk a little bit about kind of some of the changes in marketing that you've seen over the past 21 years.
Oh yeah, geez, 21 years. Yeah, so I mean, it used to be yellow pages, and that was a real way of getting connected with people, and email, I think back then, was pretty nominal, and now everything is completely digital in most instances. So we used to, as a marketing strategy, we tried to unify our yellow pages. We had billboards, we had all the signage on our trucks, they all matched. So we created a lot of brand identification just by recognizing the logo and putting it in front of you as many places as we could. And, making a lot of direct contacts. So home shows, things like that, were really critical early on, and really paramount focuses for us. As time went on, the company grew. We did TV, we did radio, we did print. We had used a firm out of Portland to kind of help us when we moved into the Portland metro market. And now all those things that we were doing are almost completely different now. Now we're doing a lot of e-blasts. Those are important. The communication is easier to make, but it's harder to get the impressions. Again, relying on professionals is almost imperative. You can't just call and put an ad in and have somebody read the newspaper. You have to understand your demographic. Do they even read the newspaper?
Right.
Do they even, does it get delivered to their house? Does it not? Professionals. So yeah, you can really market segments. And that's really our focus is really focusing on segments of business, not in totality like we used to.
So, I mean, it's kind of fascinating to think about, even asking the question, what's the yellow pages, right?
Right.
I mean, and it's just reality. It's like, I still have one on my desk upstairs. The latest one came and I was like, what is this?
Yeah. I mean, it's I look at it's like a great way to start my fire in the backyard.
Right. I think we've got a couple sitting around that are like boosting a computer or a monitor or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's tough. It's different, very different.
But I did want to pivot to home shows. Very timely topic with everything that's going on. I know we were talking again during the break, and you were planning on being part of a show last weekend or a couple of weekends ago about locally, and it got canceled, which is happening, of course, everywhere. So what are your thoughts? Like, how do you pivot? How do you, how do you still reach a consumer that, wanted to talk to you or wanted to see you, and that opportunity is gone? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I was hoping you had an answer for that. Honestly, we did have so within the company, we still do maintain a residential construction division, and we were relying on that spring home show series that we were going to do to really be our paramount way to reach clients. It's really what we were going to be using to kind of book our summer out. So now that that's gone, we have the fortunes of having I'd say a recognizable brand. I think we've done a really good job at hitting home GT Landscape Solutions from Facebook, Instagram, all the digital ways to do it. But we're trying to be creative. I mean, we're kicking around as many ideas as we can, And again, with as many years of business as we've been here, our database is pretty substantial. So we're still figuring out what that's going to look like every day, and just put our head down and react to what comes ahead here. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I think that's, we're all in this together and trying to figure that out. And what we're trying to encourage and just, to brainstorm and put your heads together in your office. And a couple of things that, really turning to video, in the absence of a show, being able to be able to show off some of your work in a video and walk through it and kind of imagine like, okay, if I were to walk somebody through this at my show, how can I pivot and do that, differently, but just on a Facebook Live video, for example. And another part of shows often, right, is the interaction. And being able to kind of answer people's questions as they come through and your display and et cetera. So even considering, doing things like Facebook Live Q&A, schedule that out, let people know you're going to be live and anticipate, think through past shows. Well, what are the top 10 questions that people ask at a show, and be able to duplicate that into video.
That's exactly the type of things that you got to get creative and start considering. And then again, getting that messaging out. Hopefully you've got some online capability, you've got some Facebook followers and a channel to disseminate that. But a virtual home show is definitely something that we've kicked around, trying to implement. And honestly, if I get stuck at home for 2 weeks, it's going to happen.
Right.
I'm really bored.
Right. Everybody's talking about that. Good. Yeah. So, well, maybe we can flesh out a couple more ideas along those lines with digital and a virtual home show in the next segment. So I think that's a great overview of your marketing, and we're going to take another quick break, and we'll be back with more with Scott Friedman from GT Landscape Solutions. Hey, Turfs Up Radio fans, this is Tim Fondrick with Hardscape Marketer. Are you frustrated or overwhelmed with marketing your business? If you'd like to be a local market leader, create a steady stream of new customers, and spend more time doing the things you love, we can help. We know what it's like to build a landscape business, run crews, and work with customers. If you're ready to grow your business by getting your internet marketing right, download our ultimate internet marketing cheat sheet today at hardscapemarketer.com/cheat sheet. That's hardscapemarketer.com/cheat sheet. All right, we're back with another segment here on the Digital Contractor Show on Turfs Up Radio. Scott, welcome back. And in this segment, I'd love to talk and dive a little bit more into digital marketing. And but before we do that, just to kind of segue off the last segment, we were starting to brainstorm a little bit about kind of a virtual show or different things like that. So what are you? So in terms of like thinking through that, like if you were to go, because you don't have an existing show to go to, and you're not setting up a new display garden, for example, what are some thoughts? Like how could you use existing projects to shoot some video and maybe walk through something that you may have built as an example for your prospective customers?
Yeah, so that's a really great idea, and one of the things that we've begun doing more recently than the things we've done historically is we've worked with some videographers here locally, professional photographers. We've started to have them come out on our projects, and as good as I am at walking around with my phone and videoing, I just don't have the eye that right, exactly. I don't have the eye for it like people that do it for a living do. Sure. And understand what you're seeing in your phone, how that translates back to to online. But we've begun doing that. A lot of what we have is we're going to have to develop, but that kind of content is really I think the alternative is going to be hosting either like you had mentioned, like a Q&A session, but whatever we can do to get in front of people in a time period that could be, 30 days, 60 days before we really, and maybe even longer before we can be face to face with people. But it is a unique opportunity as well, because people have more time. Life is a little slower today than we're accustomed to. And so putting content out, I think we have a pretty high rate of being able to get in front of people and actually engage them in some sort of online content. So that's where our wheels are starting to turn. And again, with professionals like yourself that are creative, I think there is a lot of opportunity to do some really neat things.
Yeah, I agree. What we're trying to help people pivot towards is, again, kind of a framework of content that we talk about in terms of a content framework, is to capture or create content as your first piece, and then secondly, being able to kind of share that content everywhere, on your distribution channels. That might be social, your website, you mentioned an email blast, newsletter type thing. So sharing that content everywhere, and then being able to maybe promote your best content in a paid ad or a sponsored Facebook post or something along those lines, to get that content out to, especially to reach your existing audience and new audiences, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah, and I think to that end, one of the things that I have learned, and in all the years of doing this, is you have to have the right people doing the right activities. So as a business owner looking at this, one of the things I'm not doing is trying to do this on my own. I'm not thinking that I can go out, take some photos, get them online. That is great for small emerging contractors, but businesses of any substance that have grown to a size that can afford to do that really does need to rely on professionals, because it's one thing to create content. It's another thing to create content, as you said, that is focused and is specific and is directed by somebody that's disseminating that for you, and understanding what those channels look like and where the money is best spent. The time is best spent as well. You're going to go out and shoot video of landscapes you've done. You want to make sure that you're shooting things that people genuinely want to see and that view well electronically, because not everything looks really pretty in landscaping just with a photo or video.
Right. Well, and I think that's where we think about the opportunity to kind of you can capture all kinds of content, but then also use professionals for, maybe it's a videographer that comes out and shoots a really cool project, or maybe even like a drone video, for example, that does a flyover over a really cool project, and so then you think about, so you're capturing maybe all kinds of content. Some of it's raw and authentic, which is perfectly fine, but then maybe you're promoting, your professional, your best content with a paid ad, like we were talking about from a framework standpoint. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So talking a little bit about other digital things that you're doing. So I wanted to just touch briefly on your website. So you probably had a specific URL, website address with your old company, and then you did a rebrand.
Yep.
Just for people listening and thinking about it, like what were the implications when you changed and did your rebrand?
So, quite a few. So if you Google Green Thumb, we didn't want you to go into the abyss of the internet. So on the back end, the people that helped develop our website, we had to point everything in that direction. But we did it kind of in a phased manner. We almost had kind of a duplicate, where you'd pull up and then it would point you. It wouldn't just pop up with the new website. So that messaging, it had to, we kind of started with a small snowball and started to push it down the hill to where now, still, if you type in the old company name, for the foreseeable future, it will redirect you to our site. You definitely have to think through all the little minutia, because if you type in a company that you want and all of a sudden you're redirected to a new company, you're like, what? No, that's not the company I want.
Right.
So there's So you have to be a little bit thoughtful around those things and make sure that people understand that they are reaching who they intended to reach. It's just it's a different name.
Well, yeah, and I think you really nailed it. I mean, you just want to be thoughtful about it. Think about the implications of it. Realize that, one of the things that we tell our customers is, like, if you are going to do a rebrand, make sure and have the proper redirects and messaging in place about the new rebrand, but also realize that it may, in the short term, affect, as Google kind of kicks in their machine, it may affect some of, how people find you, and, like, some of your organic rankings, for example. Just to keep those things in mind as well. They'll adjust. Google's
Right.
smart, but just in the short term, near term, you might have to keep some of those things in mind as well.
And we saw that firsthand. Our website, we were very fortunate that we had a fairly sustained amount of web submissions that we would get, and I will say that I watched that all the time. And if they dipped, or when we did make the conversion, it slowed. And then we got busy again via web, and then it kind of dwindled back off. And again, with our market focus transitioning away from residential, that added an additional metric for us to really start thinking about, is the brand, to be effective, is not reaching it's not as appealing to the residential client. So as the web submissions were declining, that wasn't always indicative of a lack of being organically ranked, or doing making sure the back end of your sites and paying for ads and things, making sure all that aligned. So that was kind of challenging for us, because in one sense we were seeing a decline, but in the other, it was probably the brand doing what we intended it to do. And so I can't reiterate that. And again, not because you're a professional of doing this, but you have to have the right people doing it, because I don't understand any of that stuff. I can look at bounce rates and the analytics, and it all sounds great, you had a low bounce rate, but nobody came to your site.
What the heck is that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think just, again, being thoughtful, purposeful, understand that there are implications. We like to say that there are a lot of moving pieces, and not to mystify it, but just to be realistic and manage expectations is kind of the thought process behind
absolutely.
It. So,
That's
I think there's a lot more that we could talk about for sure, but we're coming up on a hard break. So let's take that break, and we'll come back with more. Thanks, Scott, and we'll be right back. And we're back with another segment here on the Digital Contractor Show. My name is Tim Fondrick with Hardscape Marketer. I'm here with Scott Friedman from GT Landscape Solutions. For those of us watching the video, we can see your logo there. Awesome.
Oh, perfect. Position the camera perfectly.
Yeah, you did.
And the coffee cup.
Great. And the coffee cup. Awesome.
Branding 101.
There you go. So, so in this segment, I just kind of wanted to touch on maybe two things, maybe a recent favorite project that you completed, and why it was a favorite, and also maybe a cause that you're invested in, and why it's important to you.
Sure.
Let's start with maybe a recent project.
Okay. We did last season, we had a residential client that had a substantial property up in Westland, Oregon. And what made that project kind of memorable is we had the latitude to really try products that we hadn't really worked with before. We work with them in small scales, but not large scales. So porcelain pavers, for example, are becoming real popular. So we were able to do a mortar set patio with that. We partnered with Belgard and put in some their tandem wall system, and really were able to kind of work with some products that we hadn't gotten to before, and created a pretty cool outcome. Irrigation was pulled out of the river, so that's that was the highlight of last season. It was about a $300,000 residential project. So that was pretty fun to complete. It took a while. But
so speaking of, I mean, that's a big project. You probably don't do those every day.
Not every day. No, maybe one a year.
Yeah. Okay. So is like, what's kind of your sweet spot, just real quick, in terms of like your favorite project size, like range?
If we're talking residential, the 30 to 50 range, I can control the labor a lot better. If we have 1,000-hour job, it's easy to lose labor on 1,000 hours. Doesn't feel as pushed.
Yeah.
So jobs in that 30 to 50 range seem to be our sweet spot. But every once in a while we'll get into those $100,000 plus residential. And I'd say on the commercial side, bigger the better on those. Okay. So if we can bond it, if we can limit the competitors in the scope, or it's got stuff in it that others aren't going to do, that we try to grab as much scope on the commercial side as we can.
Makes sense. All right. Well, let's pivot into kind of maybe a favorite cause that you guys invest in and why it's important to you.
Yeah, so actually up until this year, we were actively involved in Caddies for Cure. It was for Randall's Children's Hospital. I personally, we invest in youth. So youth sports we're highly involved in sponsoring. But this cause, Randall's Children's Hospital and Dornbeckers. If you hit me up for either of those causes, it's hard to say no to. This was pretty cool. It's a golf tournament. I'm a big golfer. You can maybe kind of see that right there.
Right. For those listening, he's pointing to something on the wall, that the little golfing thing.
Yeah, right? I pointed some golf pictures. But it was really neat because one of the people at Nike had put together this cause and brought a bunch of professional athletes around, and they had a big auction. And so we always sponsored that and were involved in as much financial donation as we could to that cause. And it was kind of a grassroots thing that grew into a pretty substantial charity. And it got so big actually that he had to step aside of it this year. It was just more time than they could invest in the cause. So this year, again, just local area things. Liberty House, we donate to that, and then just individually give money to anything that helps kids.
Sure. Well, and I think, we all have to kind of, the reason we like this kind of segment is just, it's an opportunity to talk about how do we give and how do we support our communities. And, we can't give to everything, but we find a cause, and an area, like you mentioned, youth and kids, that we can, we all have our areas that we can focus on and that are passionate for us. So
yeah, if we had quick time, one of the things that we did early on when we couldn't give money was we would donate equipment. So the little leagues around always have a field day. So we would donate equipment, dump trucks, sod cutters, weed eaters, whatever they would need. We didn't have the ability to donate labor per se, but we could at least give equipment. In a lot of cases, that was a big enough bump for a lot of these small organizations to achieve a lot of really, really big things in a short period of time.
Man, I think that's a great point, because you may not have the resources to, pay your team or provide cash, but, think creatively, like what else can you provide or, help with, come alongside with that.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, that's a great point. So thanks for sharing that, Scott. We're gonna take another quick break, and we'll be back with more on the Digital Contractor Show. Hey, Turfs Up Radio fans, this is Tim Fondrick with Hardscape Marketer. Are you frustrated or overwhelmed with marketing your business? If you'd like to be a local market leader, create a steady stream of new customers, and spend more time doing the things you love, we can help. We know what it's like to build a landscape business, run crews, and work with customers. If you're ready to grow your business by getting your internet marketing right, download our ultimate internet marketing cheat sheet today at hardscapemarketer.com/cheat sheet. That's hardscapemarketer.com/cheat sheet. We're back with more on the Digital Contractor Show, and we were talking during the break, Scott, a little bit about the kind of lessons that we have learned, right? And I typically admit that I've pretty much made every mistake in the book. But if we were to look at kind of the hindsight is 2020, and maybe 2 to 3 lessons that you wish you would have known when you started, I'd love to hear your insight on that.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, like you, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. Still standing, but it took a couple good shots over the years. But I'd say that the number one in hindsight is being focused. When I was starting, a dollar was a dollar, and if somebody was going to pay me a dollar, I was interested in doing the project. And as we grew, we grew rapidly, and ended up with when I was at the largest size of my company, I had 2 standalone branches. We had over 90 people. We had a lot going on, and I still didn't have a focus. So I found that we were doing work that we could do, but we couldn't do it at the level that I would expect it to be done. And so our quality of the work suffered. And we had a ton of volume because we were taking everything and anything. And so I'd say that number one is being focused, and really pick what you're going to be good at, and be very, very good at it.
Can I just interject on that too?
Absolutely.
Because I think it's counterintuitive to a lot of people when they're starting. They're thinking, okay, we've all seen the companies say across the board, right? I mean, whatever industry, no job is too big or too small.
Right. Yeah.
We do it all.
70 bullet points on the trailer.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I think it's counterintuitive to a lot of people that are starting up, thinking, okay, we're going to do everything. And yet when you do focus, like you're saying, it's the opportunity to dial in what you're really good at, what you really want to do. I know for our company, like we say no to a lot of projects, and we refer a lot of business out to our friendly competitors, right?
Absolutely.
So, that we have good relationships with, because we know that's not a good fit for us. But again, we've learned that over the years, right? So I just kind of want to interject that.
Yeah, I mean that's and having those professional network references are really important, because yes, we're not going to do somebody calls us to do a yard cleanup. We're not going to do that. But I know people that I trust to refer them on, and that also keeps a door open for future work with people. But early on we would have run and done it, and that was problematic for us.
Yeah. Okay. Great tip. What a couple more?
All right. So I would definitely say understanding the difference between marketing and sales, and that kind of lends to your show, but not intentionally. It's genuinely a lesson that I learned, is that you can have people selling, but if you don't have marketing to support sales, you really are missing the bigger picture. Again, if you have a focused market, you have to understand the buying cycles of the market. You have to understand how to reach the market, and your salespeople aren't those people to do that. They don't understand it as well. They don't have the time to do it as well. And so I've learned that with time, is that advertising is advertising, sales is sales, and marketing is marketing. They're not the same. They're symbiotic for sure, and they all interact and collaborate, but they all have uniquely different focuses and uniquely different necessities for an organization. And so I'd say that's probably number 2, and that's a big one. And then the last one would be just make sure you're hiring professionals, and that isn't necessarily just your attorney, making sure they're an attorney, or having an accountant, but utilizing them, getting to know them is important. But then hiring professionals within your organization. If you don't have, we'll go back to sales and marketing. If you don't have the background in marketing, the experience, training, you may have an intrinsic feeling of it. You might be good at reaching people, but there's people that do that for a living, and you want them in your organization. You want salespeople to be developed by a professional salesperson, not a landscaper, not a guy like me that's a finance major. I can't train you to sell. I know how I sell, but I don't have formal sales training. So that's another huge lesson I've learned, is that I haven't, across the the spectrum of time that I've been in business, I did not always properly align the experts in the fields of expertise. So I'd say those are probably my top three, and then I could probably give you 50 others that I've made mistakes on as well.
Yeah, for sure. Do you mind elaborating, like on the sales side and like the sales training? Do you have any particular resources that you've tapped into as an organization to provide some of that sales training for your folks?
You know, yes, I have, and I will say that's probably the one side of my company that I am most actively changing and developing right now. And so over time, it was, hey, read this book. It was, let's sit down as a sales team and we're going to read this book together. We're going to talk through, things that we're seeing, things that we're learning. So we were doing books but not, it was kind of bootstrapping. It was, again, a finance major trying to learn sales at a salesman level. And one of the key differences that I have learned and now realize is selling as a CEO and as a president is very different than being a sales rep. I can get meetings differently than a sales rep can get meetings, but I can't have every meeting. I can't set up every meeting. And so my lens was always the lens that I understood and that I knew, but it was very different than what the people in the field were doing and how to manage salespeople. I didn't know how to do that. How do you hold them accountable? How do you motivate them? How do you have a coaching session with a salesperson? My background was I had one job. I worked at Safeway, and then I started doing entrepreneurial things. And so I didn't have any of that professional expertise, and it took me a long time to realize I didn't have the professional expertise. You know, I could throw money at stuff, but it wasn't well invested and it wasn't focused. And so again, that kind of goes back to that focus and making sure that the people you have, you know, guys like yourself and the teams that I've put together are executing your vision and helping guide you. And you can say no to their ideas. You can redirect, but there's professional people carrying out your strategic plan for you is very different than having a bunch of people around running out and thinking because their business card says sales, they're going to sell. And then they're going to market too for you at the same time.
Right. All good tips and hindsight and lessons that we've learned. So
yes, absolutely.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with a final wrap-up segment here with Scott, and just to be able to talk about how people get a hold of you. And we'll be right back. All right, we're back for our final segment here with Scott with GT Landscape Solutions. Thanks so much, Scott, for being on the show today and for sharing your insights and wisdom that you've gained over the past 21 years. So speaking of, do you have any kind of closing nuggets that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I mean, I think that, closing nuggets, this is a professional industry, and like any industry, and if you desire to have a professional company, you need to interact with professional people, both in the industry and outside of it, and just learn everything you can from the people that you come in contact with that have reached success in any capacity in their life. So I think that's pretty important. And networking, you know, I ran into you however many years ago now.
Right.
And we still interact. I still see you at trade organizations and things like that. And as your business has changed, mine's changed, you know, there's opportunities for crossover that you wouldn't have seen, 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
So I'd say that's probably a big thing.
Well, and I think that's, fits perfectly into the goals that we have here on the Digital Contractor Show and Turf's Up Radio in general, just trying to elevate the professionalism and everything of the green industry. And, I think you just being on the show here and sharing your wisdom, I think, and insights is all part of that. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
So anything else you'd like to add?
Well, No, if you need any landscape work though, and you're listening to the radio, you can give us you can reach out to us.
Absolutely. So that's a good segue. So how do people, reach out to you if they've got questions about your experience or et cetera? So
people within the industry, that are listening to this radio show, or also any of the other mediums that comes out. I'm always open to dialogue, and I think there's a lot of information sharing that's really valuable. So to reach me directly, I can give out my email address. My email is scott@gtlminc.com. Email is a great way to initiate conversation. That would probably be my preference. Visit our website. Our website is gtlandscapesolutions.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not as active on LinkedIn. I have to admit that the marketing department handles a lot of my LinkedIn. But I do check it probably once or twice a week, and I do engage in professional conversation. So I'd say those are probably the three best. We're on Facebook. Please follow us. We'll follow you. We connect with any landscape company that follows us. We'll follow them back just to create the community. I think everybody that competes against each other, there's value in networking, even amongst competitors, is real important.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we do the same in our, in when I was in the landscape industry, being part of Volca and everything, and we're still members now as a marketing agency, but collaborating with other professionals, learning from other professionals, and networking them to build those relationships, so we can share work when it's not a good fit, or share insights and knowledge. So. Absolutely.
That's great.
Well, thanks so much, Scott. I really do appreciate you being part of the show today, and for being willing to share your insight and knowledge and things you've learned. So, and thank you to everybody listening, either live on the radio or in any one of the formats of the replay, wherever you are and whatever you do in the green industry. I want you to make it a good day. My name is Tim Fondrick with Hardscape Marketer, and you're listening to the Digital Contractor Show on Turfs Up Radio. Thanks, and have a great day.